What if I told you that a perfect storm is forming right now, one so powerful it could redefine what liquidity even means in cryptocurrency? Here's where it gets wild. The Shane Ellis theory, RLUSD stablecoin integration, institutional custody depletion, spot ETF inflows, and the XRP ledger EVM explosion are converging simultaneously. I'm speechless at the data I've uncovered. Buckle up because this deep dive will reveal exactly why XRP might be on the verge of a supply shock that makes 2017 look like a warm-up act. The Vanishing Act. Where did 8 billion XRP go? Let me break it down. According to on-chain analytics tracking wallet movements across centralized exchanges, over 8 billion XRP, that's approximately 13% of the entire circulating supply, has systematically vanished from public order books since January 2023. Think about this. Exchange reserves plummeted from 12.8 billion XRP down to just 9.6 billion by April 2025. That's a 25% decline in visible, tradable supply in just over 2 years. Where did it go? Institutional custody. BitGo cold storage vaults, Coinbase Prime trust accounts, escrow programs locking away hundreds of millions of tokens that won't touch an order book for years. On-chain trackers now estimate under 2 billion XRP remains readily available on centralized venues. Now pay close attention to this divergence. Despite record daily trading volumes exceeding $5 billion, average bid-ask spreads on major exchanges widened from 0.12% to 0.15%. Volume surging while depth evaporates. That's textbook pre-shock conditions. The Shane Ellis theory always rested on one critical assumption: thin order books. Well, guess what? We're living it. The theory proposes that a single institutional buy order, historically calibrated around $39 million, executed on a lightly liquid exchange, could sweep through successive sell orders like a wildfire through dry brush. High-frequency arbitrage bots monitoring millisecond price differentials across venues would instantly propagate that spike globally. Once Binance spikes, algorithms trigger on Kraken, Coinbase, Uphold, everywhere simultaneously. But here's the twist nobody anticipated. During the October 10th liquidity crisis, when XRP plunged 41% from $2.77 down to $1.64 in minutes before rebounding to $2.47, centralized exchanges utterly failed. I was glued to my screen watching order books disintegrate in real time. Bid-ask spreads on Binance, Bybit, and Big One widened to multiple dollars per XRP. Customers couldn't execute trades at the bottom or the top. Meanwhile, decentralized exchanges like Uniswap, 1inch, and Hyperliquid operated flawlessly with zero downtime. On-chain automated market maker pools on the XRP ledger maintained spreads under 2 cents, while centralized venues showed spreads in dollars. That divergence exposed the Achilles heel of centralized liquidity, and it's getting worse, not better. Hold that thought, because coming up, I'm revealing the exact dollar figure that institutional on-demand liquidity corridors processed in Q1 2025, and the staggering percentage of Swift's $5 trillion daily volume that XRP is projected to capture within 5 years. Your brain might actually short-circuit when you hear this number. RLUSD, the institutional Trojan horse nobody saw coming. Hear me out on this RLUSD dynamic. Ripple's dollar-pegged stablecoin just crossed $557 million market capitalization, with 88% issued on Ethereum, but get this, 90% of holder activity happening on the XRP ledger. Institutional remittance corridors across Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America are leveraging RLUSD under MiCA compliance in the EU, New York Department of Financial Services oversight, and Dubai Financial Services Authority approval. Here's what nobody's connecting. Every single RLUSD mint requires sourcing XRP from order books to facilitate the swap, then burns a tiny fraction via the ledger's transaction fee model. It sounds negligible until you realize daily RLUSD XRP swap volumes just surged to $120 million, a 200% year-over-year increase. That's not speculative day trading. That's operational demand systematically draining the freely tradable float.
Academic analysis reveals something stunning. Under real-world volatility regimes, XRPL AMM pools deliver lower slippage than Uniswap. At 10% volatility, XRPL AMM's maximum slippage was 1.65% versus Uniswap's 1.8%. At 40% volatility, XRPL peaked at 1.73%, while Uniswap reached 2.07%, representing a 16% relative slippage reduction. This isn't theoretical. This is empirical data from millions of on-chain transactions. Now layer in the ETF dynamic. Spot XRP exchange-traded funds launched in September 2025 with 7 issuers filing: BlackRock's iShares XRPI, Fidelity's XRPR, VanEck XRPL. Within 4 weeks, they amassed $1.9 billion in assets under management. Average daily ETF trading volumes, $410 million. Pension funds, endowments, and insurance companies now comprise 60% of those inflows. These aren't retail speculators. These are fiduciary institutions bound by risk-adjusted return mandates. IMF working papers reveal first-year projections estimate $4 to $8 billion in institutional capital absorption. Let me translate. That's potentially 600 million to 2.4 billion XRP, up to 4% of circulating supply, locked into creation-redemption mechanisms managed by authorized participants. Price discovery shifts entirely away from spot exchanges into the hands of a dozen institutional desks creating and redeeming shares. But here's the kicker nobody saw coming. Central bank pilot programs demonstrate that RLUSD may serve as an intermediary settlement layer in ETF flows. Picture this. Investors deposit USD, custodian converts to RLUSD on-chain, swaps to XRP to mint ETF shares. This multi-hop redemption process concentrates selling pressure into razor-thin windows. When ETF creation flows exceed available exchange sell orders, the scramble to source XRP for RLUSD minting can exhaust order book depth in seconds. Mega reveal at 50%. And here's where it gets absolutely wild, the number that keeps institutional analysts up at night. According to RippleNet's on-demand liquidity service data, Q1 2025 alone processed $2.3 billion in cross-border transfers. But projections from the Bank for International Settlements estimate XRP could capture 14% of SWIFT's transaction volume within 5 years. SWIFT processes approximately $5 trillion daily. At current XRP prices, facilitating that volume would require liquidity depth equivalent to roughly 30% of total circulating supply cycling through corridors continuously. Think about the demand pressure. Think about the supply shock. I did not see that coming.
The federal banking chess move that changes everything. This might blow your mind. In July 2025, Ripple filed for a national bank trust charter with the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency alongside an application for a Federal Reserve master account under standard custody and trust co. Prudential regulations experts estimate a 12 to 18-month approval timeline. If granted, Ripple National Trust Bank would custody tokenized assets, hold RLUSD reserves directly with the Fed, and offer fiduciary services under Basel III compliance standards without deposit-taking or lending powers. Let me paint you a picture. The United States government needs to modernize payment infrastructure yesterday. FedNow, the Fed's decade-long pet project, remains a centralized ledger connecting banks, not blockchain technology. What if Ripple essentially gifted a customized RippleNet version to the U.S. Treasury? XRP could power real-time gross settlement for federal payments. They could launch a US dollar stablecoin through that private entity, completely sidestepping central bank digital currency controversy because it wouldn't originate from the Fed. Sounds crazy? Industry insiders report that Ripple executives have held undisclosed meetings with Treasury officials exploring exactly this scenario. A federal charter would grant Ripple guaranteed custody integration with Fed payment systems, slashing correspondent banking layers and transaction costs by an estimated 60% for financial institutions. This represents institutional-grade liquidity infrastructure at the intersection of regulatory compliance frameworks and sovereign payment modernization. When traditional banks see a federally chartered blockchain entity processing settlements faster and cheaper than SWIFT, capital flows to efficiency. That paradigm shift is already happening. The EVM explosion. Composability meets compliance. Now, here's where it gets wild from a developer standpoint. The XRP Ledger EVM-compatible sidechain launched June 30th, 2025, enabling full Ethereum virtual machine functionality. Within 1 week, over 1,400 decentralized applications went live. On-chain data showed 17,938 transactions executed, 128 new tokens issued, and daily cross-chain volume bridged via Axelar exceeding $100 million, with roughly $40 million flowing into the sidechain and $60 million flowing out. Total value locked surpassed $132.6 million within months, distributed across 82 DeFi protocols. Here's what Wall Street won't tell you. 35% of assets are in automated market makers, 28% in lending protocols, 17% in yield aggregators, and the remainder in insurance, synthetic assets, and real-world asset tokenization platforms. Daily transaction counts stabilized around 52,000 per day, with peak throughput exceeding 85,000 transactions during high market activity. Through the Axelar Bridge network, the sidechain connects to more than 80 blockchains. Cosmos, Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, you name it. This isn't just interoperability buzzwords, it's operational liquidity flowing in real time. XRP stood up against the U.S. legal system multiple times and won. The March 2025 SEC settlement affirmed programmatic XRP sales are non-securities. This legal certainty enabled 7 spot ETF filings and mass relisting on major exchanges. But now XRP is programmable, composable, and accessible across the biggest developer ecosystem on Earth. Think about autonomous agents. AI-powered programs executing yield aggregation, paying for cloud services, settling microtransactions automatically. XRP becomes the settlement asset because it's a cross-border, regionally neutral bridge currency that's now programmable everywhere. If you're building DeFi infrastructure, leveraging XRP as your base asset and RLUSD as your institutional stablecoin gives you access to compliant, legally battle-tested rails.
And you guys, I have a special trick for you, which nobody seems to be using, and I cannot wrap my head around why. Because if you sign up through my link down in the description onto the BTCC exchange, you get a 10% deposit bonus. And now stay with me here. Now, here comes the important part. If you have any trading capital on any other exchange and you move it to your newly created BTCC account, you get on top of your capital you moved another 10% extra trading capital. As an example, if you move or deposit 10K to your account, you get 1K for free. And here is why this is possible. BTCC makes money on trading fees. The more capital you have, the more you trade. The more you trade, the more they earn. So they are literally investing in your trading activity by giving you extra capital up front. And unlike other platforms where bonuses are in the 1 to 3% range, BTCC's bonus is a full 10%. I'm not kidding. I really don't understand why nobody is doing this. To me, it really seems like people sometimes are too lazy or just don't like free money. I kindly ask you to pause this video and take your time to make an account. You can thank me later in the description of this video.
The flash crash reality check and CME's rise. Let's talk about October 10th. Over $19 billion in liquidations hit the market in a single weekend session. XRP suffered a 41% intraday flash crash. I managed to snag some at $1.85 and $2.08 during the chaos. But what actually happened? Centralized exchanges had catastrophic infrastructure failures. Retail customers couldn't execute orders. Meanwhile, CME Group's cash-settled XRP futures, the regulated institutional venue, operated flawlessly and became the #1 XRP futures platform globally. CME reached $1 billion in notional open interest in just 98 days, faster than any other crypto contract in history, with 29 large institutional holders and over 370,000 contracts traded, totaling $16.2 billion notional value. When traditional finance sees regulated venues outperforming retail platforms under stress, Capital flows to compliance. That's the paradigm shift we're witnessing in real time. The European beachhead and corporate treasury wave. Ripple is making strategic power moves in Europe. The team met with Luxembourg's finance minister to finalize licensing covering all 27 EU member states. Ripple has partnerships with BBVA, a 772 billion euro bank, and numerous German financial institutions. The European Central Bank's October announcement regarding their CBBC strategy is imminent. The Bank of France already stated publicly they prefer XRP Ledger over competing technologies. There's a genuine chance XRP Ledger becomes the backbone for Eurozone digital currency infrastructure. Here's a trend flying under the radar. Companies across transport, energy, pharma, fintech, automotive, cannabis, and technology sectors are adding XRP to corporate treasuries. You already have over $1 billion committed to purchasing fresh XRP off the open market. Orco Energy announced a €75 million XRP allocation for real-time settlement of renewable energy certificates. Trident Digital formalized a $500 million XRP treasury reserve. Vivo Power International committed to $100 million. But scaling to $5 billion, $25 billion, $100 billion from institutions and banks? Notice these aren't speculative holdings. They're operational deployments. Every company can leverage XRP for treasury management solutions, foreign exchange volatility hedging, and Nostro account optimization. This corporate adoption wave represents systematic, risk-adjusted capital deployment, not retail FOMO. The macro gauntlet and what's ahead. We need to address what's ahead. $220 billion has flowed back into crypto following the crash. But warnings persist. 3 public blockchain project parties liquidated $100 million, 3 funds lost $300 million collectively, 2 mining companies faced $1 billion in liquidations, and second-tier exchanges lost exceeding $500 million. This week's macro calendar includes OPEC's monthly report, Fed Chair Powell speaking Tuesday, manufacturing indices, housing data, and 10% of S&P 500 companies reporting earnings. Volatility is guaranteed. These macro shocks ripple through crypto with amplified force. Historical data show announcements signaling tighter monetary policy trigger outsized moves. Conversely, dovish cues drive renewed asset price inflation. Why XRP wins the decade? Let's synthesize. XRP offers legal certainty unmatched in crypto. RippleNet processed $1.3 trillion in cross-border payments during Q2 2025 alone, with partners including JP Morgan, Santander, and SBI Holdings integrating XRP for treasury liquidity. ODL volumes reached $15 billion in 2024, growing 32% year over year. Technical superiority, sub-5-second settlement at fees below $0.0001 compared to Swift's 1 to 3 business days and multi-dollar costs. Network capacity exceeds 1,500 transactions per second. The EVM sidechain delivers Turing-complete smart contracts while preserving XRPL's speed and cost efficiency. RLUSD provides institutional-grade dollar liquidity with full collateralization, monthly audits, and Basel III compliant reserve management. If you're not seeing the convergence, thinning on exchange liquidity, RLUSD-powered settlement rails, landmark ETF inflows, pending banking charter, EVM programmability, and $700 billion daily Swift capture opportunity, then you're not paying attention. The Shane Ellis theory might not trigger a single afternoon moonshot to $500, but the underlying supply and demand mechanics, absolutely real. Institutional capital deployment is accelerating, regulatory frameworks are solidifying, real-world utility is expanding exponentially. Here's my challenge. Smash that like button if you believe XRP is positioning itself as the bridge asset for the next decade of global finance. Drop your 2026 price target in the comments. I want to hear your wildest and most grounded takes. I'll see you Tuesday and Friday for live streams where we dissect every regulatory filing, every partnership announcement, and every macro development shaping this market. Until then, stay curious, stay positioned, and remember, in this space, the patient and informed win. Peace.